I'm State Representative Michael Ashford from the 44th House District.
And I'm State Representative Emilia Sykes from the 34th House District. Welcome to Ohio in Focus.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Ohio in Focus, a program that brings state government to you. I'm your host, State Representative Alicia Reece and President of the Ohio Legislative Black Caucus. We have with us today State Representative Mike Ashford, who serves the 44th House District, which includes parts of the city of Toledo, and Representative Emilia Sykes, who serves the 34th House District, which includes parts of East Akron, South Akron, Cuyahoga Falls, and Bath Township. February is Black History Month in Ohio and across the nation. Representative Ashford, what does Black History Month mean to you and why is it so important?
Well, let me give you a bit of the history right here. Black History Month started by Carter G. Woodson back in 1926. And then I'm telling my age a little bit because I remember when the civil rights started back in the 50s, of course, when Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat in Montgomery, Alabama. But I was there during the 60s when the civil rights, the student protests, Vietnam War and everything. But I can sit here and tell you there's been a transition period for the last 50 years. I've seen an improvement for African Americans in housing, especially there's been a huge increase in education, of course, median income. And of course, we've celebrated 50 years of voting rights, but we still have our challenges with voting rights because of recently of the suppression laws that have happened in about 37 states. So, you know, there's been an improvement because of Black History Month and what Black History Month has reminded us what has been in the past. And so we're moving forward. So I'm pretty proud to be here with you.
Well, I appreciate that. And as you talked about, we made a lot of things have transpired in Black History Month, a lot of improvement, but we still continue to fight for the struggle. Representative Sykes, what is one of the most important issues facing African Americans in your district in Akron?
Sure, one of the biggest issues is the infant mortality rate. And not only are we battling this in the city of Akron in the 34th House District, but the entire state of Ohio is completely abysmal when it comes to the rate of infants dying before their first birthday. Ohio currently ranks 47th in the nation overall infant mortality. And a couple of years ago, we were ranked 50 out of 50 in Black infant mortality rate. And those are awful numbers for anyone to have, especially for us right here in Ohio. You know, we're looking at the infant mortality rate for Black Ohioans. Currently, it's twice the rate for Black babies than white babies. And in particular, in Akron, there are two zip codes that are the highest among the entire state. Those zip codes in 44320 and 44307. Both the zip codes I lived in and that are well situated in my district.
And that's very important when we're talking about the future of our state, making sure that our children have a fair opportunity. Representative, recent tragic events in Ohio and other parts of the country, and I know in my city in Hamilton County, we've had an urgent call for better police community relations and implementation of overall criminal justice reform.
Absolutely.
And I think that it's not a one-shot fix. Representative Ashford, tell us about, what justice reform measures you think are needed that we need to pursue. I know we've been working together with the Black Caucus. Can you talk about some of those?
Well, first of all, I just want to thank the governor for the governor's task force on community and police relationships. That's been a long time coming. And we need to continue to have conversation with the community that the police serve. And I think what we're doing is that we're closing that gap to make sure that young African-American men feel comfortable talking to the police on a regular basis. However, there's a bigger issue here. Here's a bigger issue is criminal resentencing. And that means what happens is that people don't have faith in the criminal justice at all. Because right now, when you look at how they give sentences, we have more African-American young men between the ages of 18 and 25 in jail than we do on college campuses. So when a young person goes in and gets sentenced or gets stopped, they go get 4 or 5 times more than their white counterpart. So we have to, not only do we have to deal with the police, we have to deal with the criminal justice systems, we have to deal with the courts, we have to deal with the judges and lawyers and all that combined.
And I know that we've had sentencing reform. We just had a meeting with Ohio Supreme Court Justice O'Connor about having a task force to look at the grand jury and look at it in a holistic approach. Now, you mentioned African American men, and I want to switch to another topic dealing with unemployment, because we hear all the time that unemployment is down in the state of Ohio. Representative Sykes, can you talk about the unemployment in the African American community? Because I don't think we talk enough about that. When you start to break it out, this group seems to be still unemployed and not recovered from the recession.
You are absolutely right, Representative Reece. Research shows that Ohio's black unemployment rate is over two times as high for white Ohioans. And there is a clear disparity between white and black Ohioans getting back to work. Black Ohioans have not had the same opportunities to get back into the workforce. And one of the things that we have been looking at as a caucus, as the Ohio Legislative Black Caucus, is how we can combat that for the citizens that we represent. And one of those things is encouraging local hiring requirements for public improvement contracts. This helps very qualified local workers get jobs, help them build up their communities, the communities that they live in, and it has been proven to help economic and workforce development. And each of these Ohioans, especially in these urban communities who have these large multi-million, sometimes billion-dollar projects, they deserve to have a stake in those jobs. They are living in those communities, they're paying taxes and rate increases, and we just think it's fair for those people in those communities to get jobs, and it will absolutely help even out that disparity between black and white unemployment in the state of Ohio.
So you're saying there's big projects with state funding that are in local communities that have high population of African Americans, but they're not having access to the employment jobs that are in the neighborhoods.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. And there are some projects that are funded solely by those local governments and those local communities, and they're being pushed out of those jobs as well. And so we think it's really important, and I think it's important that those people in those local communities have an opportunity to work in the jobs that they're paying for. They're paying for out-of-town people, out-of-state people to work on public improvement projects in their own community. And a lot of those people are African Americans.
Wow. I want to get to another piece dealing with voting rights. So we've had the 50th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act, something that's very passionate to me. The Voting Rights Act was something that had to be renewed every 7 years. A few years ago, we didn't even make 50 years. The Voting Rights Act was attacked in terms of the enforcement piece was deemed unconstitutional. And I spoke about it at the March on Washington, calling for a constitutional amendment for voting rights, which we don't have here in Ohio's Constitution. Absolutely. Tell us about, what do you think, we're faced with this in the legislature. What do you think is enough being done to protect our vote?
See, I'm telling my age again. So I was there when it was passed as a young person, and at that time I knew the significance of it because I had a lot of family that lived in the South, and I grew up in the North, and they told us the horror stories of being able to vote, whether it was the poll tax or you had to take a test or some type of, inquiry or any of that. So when that was passed back in 1965, it gave people of color the opportunity to vote without thinking that they were going to get harmed or their house was going to burn down or any of that case. Voting is a fundamental right of our democracy. It gives people the opportunity to go in and vote for somebody that's going to represent you and is going to be your voice, either at a local level, at a state level, or at a national level. And I think what has happened now is that we decide to see, we're seeing all these challenges when it comes to voting now. And it didn't happen because I'm going to sit here and tell you this. Ohio was one of the first states back in 2008 to pass, they extended the days from 30 to 35. They passed absentee ballot, that anybody can request an absentee ballot without being a senior and without being in a hospital. So they extended all those opportunities for people to vote in the state of Ohio. However, what they didn't think was an African-American man was going to be elected president of the United States. President Obama came in and he utilized all those tools, which was a law at the time to get elected and carry Ohio and carry the country in 2008 and of course 12. But what we're seeing now, because of his election, we're seeing a rollback to Jim Crow laws. We're seeing voter suppression. We're seeing that you have to have a certain ID, a state issue ID. Even if I'm a college student and I don't have a driver's license, but I have a college ID and I want to go in and vote, you're denied that opportunity to vote. So, all of a sudden we're seeing those challenges come back before 50 years. And so we're fighting on those right now.
Absolutely. And, Representative Sykes, and those are the reasons that we need to have something in the Constitution, so we can't change it, every other week or for any party. It just, it's fundamental. Tell us about Akron. I mean, there's been some issues in Akron. I know in Hamilton County, we had our issues about the computers not working and people being turned away. Tell us what's happening in Akron.
Sure. So this past November election, there was an unprecedented amount of absentee ballots that were discarded because they did not have proper postmarks by the United States Postal Service. That meant that these voters went to the post office, they went to the counter, they requested the ballots and the envelopes to be stamped in a certain kind of way with the proper amount of postage. They handed it over to the clerk at the counter, and to no fault of their own, by the time it reached the Board of Elections, it was ineligible to be counted and their vote was not heard. With the help of Representative Reece and the Ohio Legislative Black Caucus, we asked the Secretary of State, we need you to investigate this issue, because if it's just Summit County, we need to know, or if it's statewide. And due to that action, the Secretary of State actually put out a survey for all 88 counties across the state. And we found through that thousands of ballots were not counted due to their want of a proper postmark. Since then, I've had meetings with the Secretary of State. Some other members have had lots of discussions about what is going on with this issue. What can we do to make sure people's ballots are counted, especially when they're not doing anything wrong? And the Secretary of State put out a directive. It is a step in the right direction. However, it does not go far enough because, again, these people have done nothing wrong. They have followed all the steps that we have told them to do, and simply because the post office is changing and evolving, they cannot get a postmark. So that means state law has to change. And that's what we need to push, and we have been pushing with some hesitance from the other side of the voting rights advocates. So I'm hopeful that the Secretary of State, our General Assembly, all of our members, the OLBC can work together to get this issue fixed before the primary and the general election this presidential year, because we certainly do not want to be embarrassed and end up in litigation after November's election.
Well, I think both of you have raised some important issues. For February is Black History Month, and I think it reminds us a lot of the challenges in the Ohio General Assembly. There are 15 members in the Ohio General Assembly that are African American out of 132. And we got a lot of issues that we take on behalf of 1.5 million African Americans statewide. But before we go, I want to invite everyone who is watching at home to come out to the Ohio Legislative Black Caucus annual Day of Action on February the 24th from 10 a.m. until 12 p.m. at the Rife Center in downtown Columbus. Your state lawmakers and members of the Ohio Legislative Black Caucus will be leading discussions on criminal justice reform, which I know so many people say we definitely, desperately need. Economic justice, making sure that there's no taxation without participation. Voting rights, or people making sure that we're not going back 50 years. People already died for the right to vote. We must protect it. And much more that is of interest of African Americans throughout our state. Plus, we will teach you and talk to you and train you on how to talk to your legislators about important issues. People don't understand, how do you talk to your legislators? Come out on that day and we'll teach you, and you'll learn how to talk to them. This event is free and open to the public, and we hope to see you there. So representatives, how can the constituents reach you?
You can call me either by phone or email. My phone number at the house is area code 614-466-1401, or you can email at rep44@ohiohouse.gov.
Okay, Representative.
Sure, you can reach me same ways, phone at 614-466-3100, or via email at rep34@ohiohouse.gov.
Okay, and you can reach me at 614-466-1308 or rep33@ohiohouse.gov. We look forward to seeing you on the next edition of Ohio in Focus, the program that brings state government to you. Thank you again for joining us.